The year is 218 BC, and hostilities between Rome and Carthage have again risen to the forefront in the Mediterranean. The Roman Republic, over the course of the last few centuries, has united the Italian peninsula under its rule and kept the Gauls in the north at bay. However, conflict on the island of Sicily had put them at odds with Carthage, now Rome's greatest rival. Carthage was a trading city founded by the Phoenicians centuries ago, predating Rome. Her power rested with her immense fleet of warships and merchant vessels. This island, Sicily, was the focal point of the First Punic War. Strategically located in the center of the Mediterranean, whoever commands Sicily commands the profitable central trade routes. Rome had been successful in her first bout with Carthage, and took Sicily as her prize. In Iberia, however, the Carthaginian Hamilcar Barca was training his men. He desired to avenge the loss of the First Punic War, and, according to legend, made his son Hannibal swear to fight Rome until his dying breath. Although Hamilcar died before his time, Hannibal loyally took up his father's cause. The Carthaginians were able to take much of the Iberian territory for themselves, much to Rome's dismay. Rome herself was also aggressive, seizing islands in the Mediterranean. Both Sardinia and Corsica came under Roman rather than Carthaginian rule. The Barca's success in Iberia caught the attention of the Roman Senate. After some deliberation, Rome decided to provoke another war against Carthage and demanded that Hannibal lift the siege of Saguntum in 219 BC. He refused and captured the city, allowing Rome to justify the war that she desired. The Romans intended to attack on two fronts. One army would march through Massalia and attack the Carthaginians in Iberia. The second army would launch from Roman territory and assault Carthage directly. Rome also intended to use her navy to carry invasion troops and supplies to reinforce their armies in Iberia, North Africa, and on the surrounding islands of Corsica, Sardinia, and Sicily. Hannibal had an intuitive understanding of the Roman plan and decided that fighting within Carthaginian territory would lead to defeat. Instead, he decided on an aggressive plan of attacking Italy directly, marching northwards from Iberia and then east through Massalia and the Alps, towards Cisalpine Gaul. His objective was to fight on Italian soil and destroy the Roman army, as well as their morale, crops, and the fragile unity he perceived that held Rome together. It was both a dangerous and ambitious plan. Hannibal defeated Roman army after Roman army in Italy, winning decisively at Trebia in 218 BC and Lake Trasimene in 217 BC. Following the disaster at Lake Trasimene, the Romans adopted a strategy of attrition proposed by pro-dictator Quintus Fabius. This strategy was later abandoned due to the lack of progress. The reward for Roman impatience with this plan was decimation at the hands of Hannibal at Cannae in August of 216 BC. Following yet another defeat, Quintus Fabius regained control of the Roman army, and his delaying tactics were again adopted as the primary strategy in Italy. Hannibal was unable to take the city of Rome directly because he lacked siege equipment and was not receiving reinforcements from Carthage. Fresh troops under Hanno were defeated by the Romans at Beneventum in 214 BC. However, Rome also had fresh problems in the east. King Philip V of Macedon, encouraged by Hannibal and his successes against the Romans, entered the war on the Carthaginian side. For the moment, it seemed as if the war in the Mediterranean had come to a stalemate. Roman troops under the command of Publius Cornelius Scipio launched an attack against Carthage's holdings in Iberia in 210 BC. Unlike his headstrong predecessors, Scipio had survived Rome's many defeats at the hands of Hannibal and had become a talented general in his own right. This Iberian campaign was a great success. Scipio defeated Hasdrubal Barca at Baecula in 209 BC, and 3 years later won a decisive battle at Ilipa, taking Iberia for the Romans. The ambitious Scipio then proposed an attack on Carthage herself in Africa, and in 205 BC departed for Sicily, where he raised an army and prepared for the final years of the war. Scipio landed in North Africa in 204 BC, and the next year destroyed a combined Carthaginian and Numidian army at Utica. Following this battle, the pro-Carthaginian king of Numidia was dethroned, replaced by a pro-Roman king. Carthage now faced not only the Roman army, but that of her former ally. Hannibal was promptly recalled from Italy to deal with this crisis. Scipio's army comprised roughly 34,000 Roman infantry and nearly 9,000 cavalry. 2/3 of this cavalry were Numidian mercenaries, while the rest were Romans. The Carthaginian camp opposing them contained almost 50,000 infantry and 4,000 cavalry from all corners of the Mediterranean. Additionally, Hannibal had acquired 80 new African war elephants. Although he had a numerical advantage, much of his army had little or no experience. What's more, Hannibal did not have adequate time to prepare his green troops for the battle that lay ahead. The two armies lined up outside of the town of Zama, October 19th, 202 BC. Hannibal's front line consisted of his African elephants. These elephants were both a frightening and exotic feature of the Carthaginian army. Their purpose was to frighten the opposing forces and cause them to panic. Behind the elephants stood 3 ranks of infantry. The first consisted of approximately 12,000 mercenaries from Liguria and Gaul that were hired during Hannibal's Italian campaign. The Gauls were known for their exceptional bravery in battle, but they also had a wild nature and were unpredictable in set-piece battles such as Zama. They typically had a wide array of weapons, but were renowned swordsmen. To exploit this advantage further, Hannibal replaced their rather poor-quality swords with better ones manufactured in Cartagena. In the next line stood a similar number of men from Carthage, Africa, and Macedon. These men were of an overall higher quality than the mercenaries, but were still relatively inexperienced as soldiers. Many of these men were recently levied and had little training. Additionally, they were often equipped with weapons scavenged from the battlefields of Trebia, Trasimene, and Cannae. At the rear of Hannibal's army were the 24,000 men that he had brought back from Italy. These troops were the elites of his army, veterans of his many years of ravaging the Italian countryside, and would be held in reserve until later in the battle. Hannibal's cavalry was positioned on the infantry's flanks, with about 2,000 Numidian cavalry on the left and around 1,000 Carthaginian cavalry on the right. Scipio used a formation similar to Hannibal's, with 3 rows of infantry flanked by cavalry on either side. In the front line were some 8,000 hastati, in the second an additional 8,000 principes, and in the third 4,000 triarii. These troops were formed into the standard Roman maniple. However, as a part of Scipio's ingenious plan to defeat Hannibal's elephants, the maniples were spaced apart, leaving empty lanes in between. These gaps in the front rank were filled with Scipio's light troops, who had orders to attack the elephants. If that proved impossible, they would fall back behind the cover of the maniples, leaving open lanes for the elephants to charge through. The light troops would then try to kill the elephants as they passed relatively harmlessly through the Roman lines.